Welcome back. This is part 2 of week 7, looking at chapter 7 in Criminology 3E by Frank Smaliger, Pearson Education. And we are now going to be looking at social control theories as regard to criminality. So we covered the chapter objectives. We looked at what the interactionist perspective is. We talked about high-level overview of social process and social development, differential association, and now we're up to social control theories. So let's jump right into it. I'm sorry. Too many things on the screen. All right, here we are. Social control theories. So we're going to be looking at theories like containment, control balance, and social bond theories. Kind of interesting stuff. And remember, there's a lot of overlap between some of the psychological theories and maybe even a little of the social structure theories that we talked about last week. So don't be surprised if some of this sounds familiar. So social control theories is you're looking at various constraints that exist on behavior. If you want a real concrete example, think about if you're the guy who wants to rob the 7-Eleven and there's a police officer inside having a cup of coffee and you clearly see that. Are you going to choose to do that robbery at that point, or is that a control that's going to constrain you from going in and do it at that point? Or, some of us, let's say you're on a diet and your spouse, significant other, parent, whatever, knows, and they also know that you tend to snack. Are you going to snack while they're in the room with you, or are you going to wait till they leave before you hit the refrigerator? That's also a constraint. Some other constraints might be, what do we have strong values that may tell us, that's not a good thing to do. Remember, go back to that superego that Freud talked about. Maybe there's a little conscious in there, so no, that's wrong. And we have that control within us. So basically, social control theories kind of suggest that there's controls that keep us from doing stuff. And without those controls in place, then we tend to commit crimes or do bad things. Walter Reckless, his containment theories, it was a form of control theory that suggested that there are both internal and external factors that contribute to your law-abiding behavior. So again, what we're looking at here with control theory and specifically containment theory is that our behavior is contained. It's controlled by internal, as I said, your values, fears, whatever it is that's keeping you from doing something. And again, these theories don't necessarily always apply to crime. What is it that prevents you from applying for the job that you think you really could do, but you're maybe scared? There's something containing you or controlling you. So containment theory suggests that people don't commit crime because they're contained. And if there is not a significant control in place to stop them, then they will. So the definition of containment is that stabilizing force that, if it is effective, blocks those things that are trying to push you towards crime or pull you towards crime. So, it might be, think about a wall around the house that prevents you from going out to hang out with the bad guys on the corner. There's a lot of concrete ways you can think about this, but containment is some kind of force, whether it's your mother, your father, your parents, the police officer outside, your strong internal values of right and wrong, whatever it is, that is containment. And again, we have external containment. Might be people outside, people that surround you, groups that you belong to that are keeping you in check, or internal containment, which again could be your values and your knowledge and understanding of what's right and wrong, or maybe even fear. That's a form of containment. Your fear of getting caught or being punished could be a form of containment. delinquency and self-esteem. And I spent a lot of time in drug prevention education, and this was a big thing in the 90s. Still may be, as there's a lot of studies out there support that people with low self-esteem are more likely to be involved in delinquent behavior, or at least it's said that low self-esteem leads one towards delinquent behavior. And what is low self-esteem? It's a reduced sense of self-worth. I don't feel good about myself. I'm not worthwhile. Nobody cares about me. I'm not good at anything. You don't respect yourself. All those things would be considered low self-esteem. And concrete examples is people would suggest that people who destroy their bodies with alcohol or drugs don't have self-respect for themselves. People who resort to prostitution as a means of making money, some would suggest don't respect themselves. And of course, that's judgment based upon middle-class values or religious values or what have you, looking at those people. But that's what has been suggested. Now, a critique that one might put forward with regard to saying self-esteem, low self-esteem could lead to crime is that we know from other research and other studies, and certainly some anecdotal information, that there are plenty of people out there who feel tremendous about themselves and think that they're great and still go out and commit crimes. At least that's what we see on the outside. Is it possible that if the low self-esteem suggestion or theory is correct, that they're harboring something internally that nobody knows about? Like it's suggested that the bully, the tough guy who picks on the little kid in class is insecure. And he needs to act out and he needs to harass other people because that's what helps him to feel good about themselves. That goes back to the self-esteem idea, or self-esteem theory, if you will. Social bond theory. There's a guy by the name of Travis Hershey suggested that as we grow and develop, we form bonds. So as an individual, we form some kind of bond with social groups that we belong to, whether it's Boy Scouts, Girl Scouts, your school group, your basketball team, your family, your church, whatever it is, or your gang, or some other criminal group, like I said, the robbery crew that you were hanging out with. And those social bonds influence our behavior. So Hershey's talking about more like positive social bonds that kind of direct people or help people to stay on the up and up and stay good people. And suggesting that if that bond is weakened or broken, people might get involved in deviance or crime. So examples of some of the social bonds that he's talking about: attachment. Attachment being a person's shared interest with other people. How we are interested in same things, whether it's you're attached because you're all interested in baseball and now you're on the baseball team. Commitment is your investment. So you have that attachment, you're all interested in the baseball team. Your commitment is, do you always show up for practice? How much time do you invest? How hard do you work? Right? And then the next one, involvement, which you might get a little confused between involvement and commitment. But involvement, we're talking about how engrossed are you in the activity. So there's a lot of similarities there between commitment and involvement. But, commitment is like, what was your investment in it? And involvement is how deeply are you invested in it, kind of. And your belief is basically the shared values that you might have. How things should be done on the team. If we stick with the baseball thing, I know, not everybody knows anything about baseball, but it's a team sport and people work together for a goal, which is to win the game. And, you all have some type of shared belief on how it should be done. And if you're a good, honest team, you're going to follow the rules and not cheat, like some teams have been accused of in the past. And as long as this bond, all these different bonds stay strong, you're going to be okay. The suggestion of social bond theory is if any of these fall off to the wayside, if you lose interest or you lose attachment, you're not committed, that you might then get involved in delinquency or crime. general theory of crime, this is Hershey again and someone named Gottfriedson, is that all crime, according to them, all or most forms of crime are basically caused by the fact that people have a lack of self-control. So their theory tries to explain all or most forms of crime or criminal conduct through one approach, and that approach is that it's all because of low self-control. And you can look at what we just talked about as being the reasons for low self-control, but low self-control. Now, something we talked about in class last night is what's the cause of that low self-control is probably a key question, which they don't really talk about. Probably if you delved into the research of Hershey and Gottfriedson, they probably address it a little bit. But some of the things that we could look at, a couple weeks ago, we're talking about people that have problems in the prefrontal cortex of the brain. What does that problem do? If you have a brain tumor, or you were injured, you have a traumatic brain injury, or some kind of congenital defect where it didn't develop properly, what's one of the big things? Low self-control. So they explain crime as being caused by low self-control, but key question is, what is the cause of that low self-control? And we can go back to the question of responsibility that we had a couple weeks ago. If the person has low self-control because of a disease or defect in their brain, are they then responsible for their behavior? Don't expect you all to answer that question right now. It's just something to think about. Are they responsible if it's biological or psychiatric, psychological issue? Critiques, I may have jumped ahead of myself a little here, but critique of the general theory of crime and social bond theory is suggested that people who commit deviant behavior know that it's against the norms. They know what the rules are. Those controls are in place, but they still go off and commit the crimes. It's also been criticized as being too simple or overly simplistic and ignoring how complex the criminal process is. General theory of crime says low self-control, you commit crime. Well, I think what we've discussed over the past several weeks is there's a lot more to it than just that one factor. And again, going back to, all right, low self-control, is that low self-control because they went on a bender last night and they drank a fifth of vodka and now they went out and drove in a car? That's low self-control. Is it because they tried to kill themselves and they have an injury or permanent injury to the prefrontal cortex of the brain, and now unless somebody's watching them all the time, they're liable to do all kinds of crazy stuff? Is it because of that guy we talked about a few weeks ago, that Michael with the frontal occipital frontal tumor, orbital frontal tumor, that then he went and committed sex offenses because he had low self-control? Because it's like the devil and the angel in the shoulder, except in his case, the devil was a lot bigger than the angel. And, he went and committed these crimes, take the tumor out, and all of a sudden, boom, he's normal again. So a lot more complex than just saying low self-control. Control balance theory, by a person named Tittle, is a blend of social bond and containment perspectives. And the suggestion here in control balance theory is there is a ratio. There's a ratio of controls that are in place. And if you have too little control in place, you might commit crime. If you have too much control, that might also lead somebody to get involved in deviant behavior. And this is the chart of control balance theory. It's also in your book, much smaller in the book. You could probably, if you're looking at this on a computer screen, or you download the PowerPoint, you can look at it on a computer screen. What you can see here in the top blue line is that you have, to the left, control surplus. In other words, the person controls others and has power. And to the right, you have somebody with control deficit. So they are controlled by others and they lack power. And you see, their research has showed us that on either end of that spectrum, there is a high possibility of persons being involved in crime and deviance. While the one in the middle that has a balance of control, I have some control, and maybe there's a little bit of people controlling me. That balance there, those people are less likely. And then the bottom one type of crime or deviance. Just basically is their explanation in control ratio theory is what type of crime might someone be involved in depending upon their balance. So a person who has low self-control is more likely to form violent crimes, repressive and predatory crimes, types like physical violence, rape, robbery, street crimes. Where the person who has a lot of control, might be somebody, examples might be some of the executives in big corporations that have committed crimes. They have a lot of control over a lot of people, so they exploit, they plunder, they take advantage. White-collar crime, official deviance, police corruption. Believe it or not, police are considered over in that area. We have a high level of control. And someone might get involved in crime because of having, that power, if you will, and abusing the power. Critiques of social control theories. They assume that everyone's a nonconformist or everyone's going to be deviant unless there's a control. They're looking at, right out of the gate, everybody's going to be bad unless there's a control in place to stop them. They don't recognize what our own motivations are and other conditions that propel us to get involved with other people. What pushed me or what pushed this person to get involved with the gang? The video that we showed in class that I talked about in the overview video last night. Available on the Films on Demand. It was ABC News video, Films on Demand, called Crime and Justice. And it was 2 female gang members in different gangs in the city of Los Angeles that they followed around. And the one young woman who was not now, but when the video was made many years ago, was like early 20s. She explained that she had gotten involved in the gang at the age of like 12. And why did she do that? She did that mainly because her father died, and then her mother was working all the time to support them. And therefore, she had no family involvement, really. And she joined the gang to provide that. That was her family. She grew up in the gang. And later on, when they interviewed this young woman, she's at her house, a barbecue at her mother's house with a bunch of her gang members, and she's got a little brother. Apparently her mother remarried, and now she's got a little brother. And she's asked, well, what about your little brother? You think he'd join a gang? And she's like, no way, no way, no way. I don't want that life for him. Well, why was it okay for you and it's not all right for him? And her answer was, well, he doesn't need that. He has a family. Like I said, the mother apparently remarried. The little kid has a mom and a dad in the home. And, the older sister is like, no, he doesn't need that. I needed it because at 12 years old, my father died and my mother was working too much. And I had nobody. And I got involved in it. So social control theories don't necessarily recognize what was the motivation to put yourself in that situation where you're now surrounded by these people involved in various activities, and the controls may not be in place. All right, that's the end of this segment on social control theories. So take a little break, go grab a cup of coffee, go do whatever you do, and come back and rejoin us in a little bit. Thank you very much.